It started with a sound that wasn't supposed to exist in the emptiness of space. The Valoran patrol ship, gliding silently through a quiet sector near the edge of their known territory, picked up a strange signal. It was faint, almost like a whisper, hidden behind cosmic noise. The crew on duty at first thought it was just interference, maybe a reflection from an asteroid belt. But when the signal repeated clear and steady, their curiosity turned into unease. It had a pattern, organized, deliberate, and nothing like a natural echo. The Valorans were explorers as much as they were warriors. They had crossed dozens of systems, mapped countless stars, and fought off enemies when needed. They thought they had seen it all. But this signal was different. It carried a rhythm almost like a heartbeat, and it came from deep space, an area they believed to be completely empty. The crew adjusted their scanners, amplifying the range until the monitor flashed a result that left everyone staring in disbelief. There was something there. Massive, silent, and unknown. The captain ordered the ship to slow down and maintain a safe distance. The scanners started reading more details. The object was metallic, roughly the size of an entire city, floating without motion. It didn't match any known design, not even the oldest ones in their database. No radiation leaks, no energy trails, no communications, just stillness. For a moment, the crew thought it might be a derelict or some ancient structure left behind by a forgotten race. But the deeper they scanned, the stranger it got. Its surface didn't reflect light in a normal way. It seemed to absorb it. Even their strongest beams couldn't bounce off. It was like the object was swallowing every trace of light and sound around it. One of the technicians murmured that it felt like the thing didn't want to be seen. Nobody laughed. There was an uncomfortable silence on the bridge. Every eye stayed fixed on the dark shape slowly growing larger on the main screen. The captain finally gave the order to approach, but carefully. The ship's engines purred softly as they closed the distance kilometer by kilometer. The object came into clearer view, an enormous vessel, its design unfamiliar but powerful in appearance. Its hull was sleek and layered with strange patterns that seemed to shift under the scanner beams. The closer they got, the more the Valorans realized it wasn't broken or abandoned. It was perfectly intact, as if it had just been built. No debris, no damage. No sign of aging, and still, no response. For experienced explorers, silence was often worse than hostility. The captain asked the crew to check for any signs of life or power sources. The readings came back confusing. The interior was shielded by something that blocked their sensors entirely. But once in a while, a faint pulse of energy flickered deep inside, too organized to be random. Whatever it was alive in some way, or at least awake. The younger officers whispered nervously. Some thought it might be an experimental ship from another empire. Others believed it could be an ancient defense structure guarding something important. But the oldest crew member shook his head slowly. "No," he said quietly. "This is something different. Look at the structure. That's not like anything built by the known races." That was when the first chill ran through the crew. Every known spacefaring civilization kept detailed records of their ships and enemies. If none of them recognized it, that meant it came from somewhere far beyond the mapped regions of the galaxy. Somewhere untouched, somewhere no one had ever been. As the alien fleet circled the silent vessel, one of the pilots noticed something strange. Their navigation systems began to act up. Compass readings flickered, distance measurements reset, and for a few seconds the ship's sensors showed impossible data, as if space itself was bending around the mysterious vessel. Then everything stabilized. It was as if the ship had noticed they were watching and adjusted its presence to remain hidden again. That was the first time any of them felt genuine fear. The captain didn't like fear on her bridge, but even she couldn't hide the tension in her voice. She ordered a secure scan, hoping to collect enough data before retreating. As they focused their sensors one last time, they caught a glimpse of something that made their hearts skip. Deep under the vessel's dark hull, a faint glow appeared, like a light awakening after a long sleep. It was small at first, then spread slowly across the ship's surface in thin lines, forming patterns that looked almost like veins carrying energy. The dark shape was no longer still. The crew froze. The energy signature was climbing fast. The communications officer shouted that the ship was powering up, but the readings didn't make sense. No known reactor could generate that much energy in such a short time. The power levels spiked and then steadied, as if the vessel had simply woken up. For the first time, the alien ship sent out a signal. Not a distress call, not an attack, but something more subtle. It was scanning them. The Velorans were no longer the observers. They had become the observed. On the bridge, the air was thick with tension. Every second felt longer than the last. The captain debated whether to flee or stay. Curiosity battled fear. Finally, she decided to hold position. "We started this," she said softly. "Let's see it through." The crew obeyed, though their hands trembled slightly over the control panels. Then, the voice came. It wasn't transmitted in the alien language. It wasn't even transmitted through normal channels. It came directly through their systems, perfectly translated, clear and human. "Identify yourself." The words echoed through the bridge like a cold wind. Every system on their ship flickered at once, as if the strange vessel had taken partial control just to deliver its message. The technician's hands shook as he confirmed that the message had come from the unidentified object. Everyone looked at each other in stunned silence. Who or what could have known their language so precisely? The captain hesitated before replying. She tried sending a formal signal of peace, explaining they were explorers and meant no harm, but no answer came. The giant ship floated quietly again, its hull glowing faintly under the distant starlight. For a moment it seemed like the event had passed, that the voice was just some automated system from an old, forgotten civilization. But then, the stars shifted. At least that's what it looked like. In truth, the massive ship had moved, so smoothly and so silently that space itself seemed to warp around it. No thrusters, no sound, just effortless motion. The alien fleet's instruments couldn't even register how it had moved. It simply wasn't possible under any known laws of propulsion. The crew gasped as the ship's size became clear. It wasn't just large. It was colossal, dwarfing even the Veloran flagship. Its dark surface shimmered like liquid metal, and strange lights pulsed underneath, giving the illusion that it was breathing. The alien officers could feel their hearts pounding. The captain finally whispered, "That's no derelict. That's a warship," and she was right. The next few minutes were pure silence. Both ships hung there, facing each other across the emptiness. One was ancient and proud, the other cold and unknowable. The Velorans didn't realize it yet, but they had just made contact with something that would change the way their species looked at the universe forever. The mysterious ship didn't attack, didn't flee. It simply waited as if studying them. The captain could almost feel it, like a presence, a mind, observing from somewhere deep within that vast hull. No one on that crew would ever forget that feeling. Later, when reports of the event spread through the Veloran Empire, most dismissed it as an exaggeration. But those who had been there knew the truth. They had seen the impossible. They had met something that defied logic, and the name that would echo in their records for generations to come was whispered that night for the first time. The ship that came from nowhere, the battleship of the humans. The universe was vast, full of wonders and dangers, but that night, one truth became clear to every soul aboard the Veloran fleet. They were not the only ones exploring the stars anymore. Someone else was out there. Someone far older, far wiser, and far stronger than they could have ever imagined. The first contact had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The silence of space had never felt heavier. The Veloran crew stood frozen in their places, staring at the enormous ship floating ahead of them. The mysterious vessel didn't move or speak, but its presence was overwhelming. It looked alive in a strange way. Its dark metal hull seemed to breathe, shifting gently as faint patterns of blue light pulsed across its surface. Every system on the Veloran flagship continued scanning, but the results made no sense. The material of the ship couldn't be analyzed. Every scan bounced back incomplete, as if something inside the ship was bending the data. The crew tried adjusting the sensors again and again, but nothing changed. It was like trying to look into a black mirror that reflected nothing at all. The captain finally broke the silence. "Record everything," she ordered. "Every reading, every sound." Her voice was steady, but everyone could tell she was hiding her fear behind calm words. The technician closest to the radar console frowned. "Captain, the ship's design, it's not like anything in our database. No known race builds ships like that." The captain looked at the main screen. The strange vessel floated without a single visible thruster, and yet it held perfectly still against the pull of nearby planets. "Then maybe," she said softly, It's not from any known race." Her words hung in the air like an echo. Nobody dared to speak for a while. As the Valorans continued to observe, they noticed small flashes of light flicker along the side of the strange ship, like windows lighting up in sequence. Some of the crew thought it might be a sign of communication, but the lights didn't follow any known pattern. It almost looked like the ship was thinking, processing, or preparing. Then suddenly one of the officers gasped. "Captain! The ship is scanning us again." Lines of energy rippled around the human battleship. The Valoran flagship's shields flickered under the invisible touch of the scan. It wasn't an attack, but it felt invasive, like a pair of unseen eyes examining every detail of their ship, their systems, their crew. A deep hum filled the bridge, vibrating through the floor and walls. Lights dimmed, instruments glitched, and then, in the middle of all that chaos, a new signal appeared on the communication screen. It was a short, simple transmission. No image, no sound at first. Then a voice, calm, steady, completely understandable. "This is human territory. Identify yourself." The moment those words came through, the crew looked at each other in disbelief. The translation system didn't even have to work. It was already in their language. "That was impossible. How can they know our language?" whispered one of the younger officers. No one had an answer. The captain took a deep breath and decided to respond. She activated the transmitter and spoke clearly. "We are explorers from the Valoran Empire. We mean no harm. We detected your ship and came to investigate. Identify yourself." The screen stayed black. The only sound was the faint hum of energy from the other ship. Seconds passed. Then, without warning, the human vessel moved. No thrusters fired, no energy burst, it just glided forward silently, covering thousands of meters in seconds. The Valoran crew panicked. Alarms blared as the proximity sensors went wild. The human ship stopped right in front of them, close enough for the crew to see the faint outlines of its structure. It was enormous, like a floating fortress built with impossible precision. "Hold position," the captain shouted, gripping the edge of her console. "Do not engage." The ship obeyed. Nobody dared to attack. The human vessel stayed still again, towering above them like a shadow that could swallow their entire fleet. "Captain," said one of the engineers in a trembling voice, "our targeting systems, they're not working. I tried locking onto it just to test the sensors. It doesn't exist." The captain turned sharply. "What do you mean it doesn't exist?" The engineer showed her the monitor. "Every time we try to focus on it, the system resets. It's like the ship refuses to be seen." The captain didn't respond. She just stared at the screen. For the first time in her long career, she realized what true power looked like. The human battleship didn't need to attack. It could simply erase itself from enemy targeting systems. Then a light appeared on the side of the human vessel. A faint beam stretched across space and stopped right in front of the Valoran ship. It wasn't a weapon. It was a communication beam. The captain hesitated for a moment, then nodded for the signal to be accepted. The screen on the bridge flickered to life, showing static at first. Then an image appeared, a human, standing inside a bright command center. The human's expression was calm, confident, and strangely emotionless. "This is Captain of the HSS Titan," the figure said. "You have entered a restricted zone. State your purpose." The Valoran captain swallowed hard. "We detected an unknown signal and came to investigate. We mean no harm. We didn't know this territory belonged to anyone." For a few moments, the human captain said nothing, then in the same steady tone replied, "You are in human space. Leave immediately. Do not attempt to scan or approach any further." The Valoran crew was stunned. Human space? That was impossible. Humanity was an old story, a rumor passed down through generations. Most believed the humans had vanished centuries ago, destroyed by wars, wiped out by their own chaos, or lost to time. The captain tried to keep her voice firm. "Humans, that's not possible. You disappeared ages ago. No one has seen a human ship in over 1,000 years." The human captain tilted their head slightly. "We didn't disappear. We evolved." Before anyone could ask what that meant, the screen went dark. The communication cut off instantly. The human ship powered down again, returning to its silent, intimidating stillness. The Valoran bridge fell quiet. Nobody spoke for a long time. The crew just watched the enormous battleship in awe, unsure whether they should feel relief or fear. Finally, one of the officers broke the silence. Captain, what now? The Valoran captain looked at the screen, at the dark ship that seemed to be watching them even in silence. We leave, she said softly. We've seen enough. But before the fleet could move, something unexpected happened. The human battleship emitted another pulse of energy. This time it spread outward like a soft wave. It wasn't an attack. It was data, a message. Their translation system automatically decoded it. The message read, "You are not our enemy, but the galaxy is changing. Be careful who you trust." After that, the human ship slowly turned, aligning itself with a distant star. Without any visible motion, it accelerated and vanished into deep space, leaving no trail behind. Just like that, it was gone. The Valoran fleet remained there for several minutes, trying to process what they had just witnessed. No warp signature, no trace. It was as if the ship had dissolved into the void. One of the younger crew members whispered, "That was real, right? We didn't imagine it?" The captain nodded slowly. "Oh, it was real. And whatever that was, it wasn't just a ship. It was a message." When the fleet finally turned back toward their home sector, the stars around them seemed a little less familiar, a little more mysterious. The crew couldn't stop talking about what they'd seen, the silent power, the human's calm voice, the impossible technology. Even the captain, who rarely showed emotion, kept replaying the encounter in her mind. The humans were back, not as the weak, war-torn species described in old archives, but as something far greater, something evolved. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. That strange meeting in empty space would not be forgotten. It would spread across the Valoran Empire like fire, whispered in mess halls and training centers, analyzed by scientists and debated by leaders. Some would call it a warning. Others would call it a miracle. But for those who had seen it with their own eyes, it was something else entirely, a moment of truth. Because now they knew, somewhere out there, humanity had returned. And they weren't just surviving, they were watching. The Valoran fleet returned home carrying more than just data. They carried a secret, one that didn't fit into any known report or scientific explanation. Their logs recorded what had happened, but no words could capture what they had felt. That strange silence, the calm human voice, and the way that massive battleship moved as if it owned space itself. It stayed with them. The Valoran Empire, known for its confidence and power, didn't believe in legends. They believed in facts. So, when the captain reported that they had met a human ship, the council refused to take it seriously. They thought it was a misunderstanding or a trick from another race. The Empire had enemies, many of them. And to most officials, this story sounded like an illusion or a trap. But for those who had been there, it wasn't a story. It was a memory that haunted their dreams. The captain of the patrol fleet sat through endless meetings trying to convince the higher authorities. She showed them data, the impossible readings, the energy waves, the voice recording that clearly said, "This is human territory." Still, the council only half believed her. They ordered her to rest and let the scientists handle the investigation. But deep down, she knew the scientists wouldn't find anything. The humans had erased their traces perfectly. There would be no evidence left behind. While the Empire debated what to do, something strange began to happen across the galaxy. Other patrol ships from distant regions started reporting unusual sightings. Dark shapes drifting in deep space, unknown energy signatures that appeared for minutes and then vanished. Some reports even mentioned voices, short transmissions warning ships to stay clear of restricted zones. At first, most dismissed these as rumors. But soon there were too many to ignore. Something or someone was moving through space quietly watching. Weeks passed. The Valoran Empire decided to send another fleet to the sector where the first contact had taken place. This time it wasn't just one ship. It was a full expedition, scientists, soldiers, and diplomats. They wanted answers. They wanted to know if humans had truly returned, or if this was some elaborate deception. The fleet arrived exactly where the first encounter had happened, but the space there was empty and calm. No signals, no traces of the human ship. The scientists began their scans again, but the readings were all normal. It was as if that massive battleship had never existed. The new crew felt disappointed, but the captain of this fleet refused to give up. He ordered the ships to spread out to search every corner of the system. Days turned into weeks, and still, nothing. Then, on the 13th day, everything changed. One of the smaller scouting ships reported a faint energy pulse near a dying star. The signal was weak, barely visible through the radiation storm, but it matched the strange pattern recorded during the first encounter. The captain immediately ordered the fleet to converge on those coordinates. As they approached, the space around them began to distort again, tiny flickers of light bending in unnatural ways. The crew watched in awe as the dying star's light seemed to twist and stretch, and then, like a ghost emerging from the dark, it appeared. The same ship, the same black hull, smooth and cold. The same silent presence that seemed to swallow all light. The HSS Titan had returned. This time, however, it didn't remain still. Slowly, its engines glowed faintly, and it turned to face the approaching Valoran fleet. Every ship in the formation froze. The captain didn't order an attack. He simply said, "Hold your position. Do not provoke." The human vessel emitted a low-frequency pulse that rippled across space. It wasn't an attack, it was communication. The Valoran computers automatically translated the message. "You were warned not to return." The captain hesitated before replying. "We come in peace," he said. "We only want to talk. We wish to understand who you are." For a long moment, there was no response. The human ship just hovered there, motionless like a dark moon. Then a faint light appeared near the ship's front section. A signal. The translation system activated again. "Your kind is not ready to understand." The words sent chills down every spine. The Valorans had considered themselves one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. But hearing that calm, confident message made them realize how small they might truly be. The captain tried again. "If you are humans, then we've heard stories about you. You were explorers, dreamers, builders. What happened to you?" This time the voice that replied sounded almost human. Soft but powerful. "We learned. We lost. We changed." The Valoran captain frowned. "What does that mean?" No reply came. Instead, the human ship began to move again. The movement was slow but deliberate, almost like an invitation. The captain decided to follow. Against his officers' warnings, he ordered one ship to stay behind and relay their position to command while the rest followed the HSS Titan deeper into the system. They traveled for hours through fields of radiation and broken asteroids until they reached a calm region of space that didn't exist on any map. In the middle of that region floated a massive structure, unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't a planet or a station. It was something in between. A colossal ring of light and steel spinning silently. The Valorans gasped as they realized what they were looking at. It was a gateway. The human ship slowed near it, hovering as the lights on the ring began to glow brighter. Energy arced across the structure, opening what looked like a doorway made of light. The humans were activating it. The Valoran captain's voice shook slightly as he spoke. "What is that?" The human ship responded, "The bridge between galaxies." "Not for you." Before the Valorans could react, the gateway flashed and the human ship moved forward, entering the light. In seconds, it was gone. The gateway flickered once and shut down, leaving nothing but silence. The Valoran fleet was left behind, speechless, powerless, and stunned. They had just witnessed technology beyond imagination. A ship that could cross galaxies in a blink. When they returned home, their report shook the Empire to its core. The government tried to keep it secret, but whispers spread quickly. Scientists, soldiers, and even civilians began speaking about the return of humans. Some saw it as a threat. Others saw it as hope, a sign that maybe humanity had become guardians of the universe. But for those who had seen it with their own eyes, there was something deeper, an emotion that words couldn't describe. It wasn't fear or admiration. It was a quiet understanding that the universe was far bigger than they had ever believed, and maybe, just maybe, the humans had discovered something far beyond power. The Valoran captain who had led the second expedition spent days replaying the recordings. The way the ship moved, the tone of the human voice, the structure they had seen, all of it. One line from the transmission echoed in his mind again and again. "Your kind is not ready to understand." What did it mean? Was it a warning or an invitation? Were the humans protecting something or preparing for something far greater? As the stars drifted by outside his ship's window, he couldn't help but wonder what lay on the other side of that glowing gate. What kind of world had humans built? And why did they choose to stay hidden for so long? He didn't know. Nobody did. But one thing was certain. The The Valorans would never see the universe the same way again, because now they knew that somewhere, out there beyond the stars, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were exploring places no one else could reach, mastering forces no one else could understand. The galaxy was vast, but the humans had found their place in it, and that place was far beyond the reach of anyone else. The encounter that had begun with a simple signal had turned into a revelation. And this time, there was no doubt left. The humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Valoran Empire didn't sleep that night. The news of the second encounter spread faster than anyone could control. Officers whispered in quiet corridors, scientists buried themselves in data that refused to make sense, and leaders gathered in secret meetings that lasted for days. The return of humans had become more than a rumor now. It was a fact, a terrifying, fascinating fact that no one knew how to deal with. The recordings from the expedition fleet were played again and again. The voice of the human captain, calm and certain, echoed through every meeting room. "Your kind is not ready to understand." Those words felt like a mirror showing them their own limits. The Valorans were powerful, but compared to what they had witnessed, their power felt small. They had believed they were at the top of the universe's chain, the masters of science and exploration. But that belief had been shattered by one ship, one silent, unshakable human battleship that could bend reality without even firing a shot. While the Empire argued, the captain of the Second Fleet sat alone in her private chamber, replaying the images over and over. She zoomed in on every frame, studied every spark of energy, every movement of the human ship. There were no signs of mistakes, no weakness, no hesitation. Every motion had purpose. It was not arrogance, it was confidence. The kind of confidence that came from knowledge far beyond anything the Valorans had. The Empire finally decided to act. They called for a secret council, inviting only the highest-ranking leaders from the military, science division, and exploration command. The meeting was quiet, but the tension inside the chamber was unbearable. One of the scientists began, "If humans truly possess this level of technology, then they could easily erase us if they wished to." A general responded coldly, "Then why haven't they?" That question hung in the air for several seconds. Nobody had an answer. The humans had not attacked. They had only warned and left. But to a civilization built on control, the idea that someone could appear, watch, and disappear at will was deeply unsettling. The council agreed on one thing: they needed to know more. The Empire formed a new program, a silent mission, dedicated to studying human activity. They called it Project Horizon. Its purpose was simple: observe, collect, and learn. Over the next few months, stealth probes were launched into deep space. Each one carried advanced cloaking technology, designed to hide from even the strongest scanners. Their job was to follow any trace of human energy patterns and record them. For weeks, nothing happened. The probes drifted through the cold emptiness, collecting only background radiation. But then one of them picked up something, a faint distortion near the border of the Orion cluster. It was weak, almost invisible, but it matched the energy signature of the human ship seen earlier. The signal came in short pulses, too structured to be random. It wasn't a distress call or a broadcast, it was navigation data. The humans were moving again. The Empire sent a silent command to follow. The probe obeyed. It drifted through the emptiness for days until it finally found something. A structure, massive, metallic, and hidden in the shadows of a dead moon. It wasn't just one ship. There were many. The images it captured sent chills through everyone who saw them. Rows of enormous vessels, all with the same dark, smooth design. The same strange lights glowing faintly under their hulls. The same symbol etched across their sides, something that looked like a circle divided by a thin line. It was a fleet. The humans hadn't just returned. They had built an entire armada. When the images reached the Valoran capital, the council gathered again. The room was filled with silence except for the faint hum of the holographic projector showing the human ships. One of the younger officers spoke softly. "They're preparing for war." The head scientist shook his head. "No, look at their formation. They're not positioned like a battle fleet. They're stationary, guarding something." The screen zoomed out, revealing a massive structure at the center of the fleet. It looked like a city floating in space. Towers of light, circular platforms, and massive energy fields surrounding it like a shield. The council stared in disbelief. It wasn't a base. It was a habitat. Humans had built a home among the stars. The Valorans had always believed humans were reckless, short-lived creatures who destroyed themselves with war and ambition. But what they were seeing now was the opposite. A race that had learned discipline, patience, and unity. The Empire had to make a choice: stay silent or make contact again. Some argued it was too dangerous. Others said they couldn't afford to stay blind. Finally, the Council decided to send one ship, an unarmed envoy, to observe from a distance. When the ship arrived near the hidden human colony, it stayed far enough to avoid detection. For days it watched. The humans didn't hide. In fact, they seemed to know they were being observed. They didn't respond or attack. They simply continued their quiet routines. The Valoran crew could see smaller human ships moving in perfect harmony, forming patterns like waves in the sea. Massive transports carried materials to nearby planets, while drones shaped new structures with beams of light. The entire scene felt peaceful, purposeful, and strangely beautiful. It was nothing like the Empire's harsh military life. Every night, as the crew looked at the glowing city, they couldn't help but wonder, what had made the humans so different from before? What had changed them from the aggressive, chaotic beings of old to this silent, organized civilization? On the 10th day, something unexpected happened. The human fleet suddenly stopped moving. All their ships turned toward the Valoran observer vessel. The crew's hearts raced. They hadn't sent any signals. How did the humans know they were there? Before they could even react, their communication screen lit up. It was the same calm voice they had heard before. "You still do not understand," the voice said. "We do not seek war. We protect balance." The Valoran captain swallowed hard and replied, "Protect balance from what?" The voice paused. Then came the answer, "From what's coming," and just like before, the screen went dark. The human ships turned back to their duties as if nothing had happened. The Valoran envoy stayed a few more hours, hoping for another message, but none came. When they finally left, every crew member was silent. They didn't know what the humans meant, but those words echoed in their minds. Protect balance from what's coming. What could be coming that even humans feared? When the ship returned, the report was brief but powerful. The humans were no longer a mystery. They were guardians of something greater, watching over the galaxy from the shadows. And whatever they were guarding against, it was something the Valorans didn't even know existed yet. That night, as the captain looked out into the stars, she felt a strange mixture of awe and unease. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of her scanners, the humans were still watching. Not enemies, not conquerors, but silent watchers of a universe they clearly understood better than anyone else. And deep inside, she knew one truth. The galaxy had entered a new age. The humans had not only survived, they had become something greater. Something beyond fear, beyond war. Something that even the proudest empires would one day have to bow to. Not because of force, but because of wisdom. No one slept easy that night in the Valoran capital. Scientists argued, leaders planned, and whispers filled the streets. But somewhere far beyond their reach, among the quiet stars, a human voice spoke softly into the void. The balance must hold. And then, silence again. That silence was more powerful than any explosion, more meaningful than any declaration of war. Because in that silence, the universe itself seemed to wait, waiting for the next move, waiting for the truth to reveal itself. The first contact had left the aliens stunned, but what came next would leave the galaxy forever changed. The Valoran Empire was buzzing with speculation. Officers, scientists, and leaders all whispered about the humans and their mysterious fleet. Every report from Project Horizon was carefully analyzed, but no one could fully understand what the humans were doing or why. The energy readings alone were baffling. Technology far beyond the Empire's comprehension, and yet it was used with purpose and precision. The captain of the second expedition fleet couldn't get the images out of her mind. The humans had built a floating city, a fleet that moved with silent harmony, and yet they had not fired a single weapon. They had the power to destroy, but they chose restraint. Every decision the humans made seemed deliberate, calculated, and far wiser than anything the Valorans had ever seen. Her thoughts drifted back to the moment the human fleet had turned to face their observer vessel. The calm voice warning, "You still do not understand. We do not seek war. We protect balance." She had replayed those words hundreds of times in her mind. trying to grasp their meaning. Protect balance from what? The message had been clear, but the implication was terrifying. Whatever they were guarding against was beyond the Valorans' knowledge. Yet it was important enough to warrant such an extraordinary display of power. While the Valorans struggled to understand, the humans continued their quiet operations far beyond detection. They built, organized, and patrolled, always vigilant. Nothing seemed hurried or chaotic. Every move was precise. Every ship had a purpose. Even their silence had weight, a presence that was deeply felt but rarely explained. The Valoran leadership debated their next course of action. Some argued that they should send a larger fleet to confront the humans, to test their strength and find their weaknesses. Others cautioned against it. The humans hadn't attacked yet. Every encounter had been defensive, not aggressive. They seemed to be setting boundaries, not seeking conflict. It was a dangerous game. Any wrong move could provoke an overwhelming response from a species that had shown it could render an entire fleet powerless without lifting a weapon. Ultimately, the Council decided on caution. They authorized a series of small reconnaissance missions. Careful not to provoke the humans, stealth ships were dispatched to monitor activity from afar. Every movement, every pulse of energy, every pattern of fleet activity was recorded. For weeks, nothing overtly threatening occurred. Yet the Valorans could feel the humans' awareness. Every observation was met with subtle adjustments, a shift in formation or a brief energy ripple. The humans knew they were being watched, and they accepted it without hostility. One of the reconnaissance teams captured footage that left even the most experienced Valoran officers in awe. The human fleet moved together in ways that resembled living organisms. Ships shifted in perfect synchronization, forming patterns that conveyed information without any visible signals. Light beams connected vessels, forming a lattice that pulsed with energy. It wasn't just technology. It was communication, intelligence expressed through motion and light. The Valorans realized that their understanding of warfare, navigation, and strategy was primitive compared to this. The humans had mastered coordination on a level that went beyond simple orders or commands. Their movements were almost instinctive, as if the fleet itself had a single mind, guided by something far greater than a captain or crew could control. At the same time, scientists studying the human city were discovering phenomena that defied logic. Structures hovered without support. Energy fields provided light and protection simultaneously, and artificial gravity was perfectly maintained across vast sections of the city. Machines repaired themselves autonomously, yet each repair was executed with flawless precision. Every system seemed designed to sustain life efficiently, while remaining hidden from anyone who wasn't meant to see it. One officer, observing these records, muttered quietly to herself, "They aren't just advanced, they're evolved." The term resonated through the ranks. Evolved not only in technology, but in discipline, coordination, and purpose. They had survived centuries of challenges, learned from mistakes, and emerged stronger. They were no longer the humans spoken of in myths, fragile, chaotic, short-lived. They had become something far greater. Then the unexpected happened. One of the reconnaissance ships reported movement in the outer patrols of the human fleet. At first it seemed normal, a routine check. But then the human ship changed course and the energy patterns suddenly spiked. The reconnaissance vessel detected a surge of power that sent its sensors into overload. Within seconds, the humans had appeared on the ship's sensors in multiple positions simultaneously, though no vessel had physically moved. The Valoran crew stared in disbelief. It wasn't teleportation, at least not as they understood it. It was a manipulation of space and energy that allowed humans to be in multiple locations at once, fully aware of every observer without exposing themselves. It was a defensive display, and it was overwhelming. The human fleet did not attack. They simply demonstrated capability, an unmistakable warning that the Valorans were not in control. The reconnaissance vessel reported immediately, "Do not attempt engagement." The Council understood. Even the most daring generals recognized that the humans' restraint was as powerful as any weapon they could wield. Despite their caution, curiosity remained. The Valorans wanted answers. Why had humans disappeared for so long? How had they survived and evolved so dramatically? Why had they returned, and what was the balance they sought to protect? Weeks later, a communication came unprompted from a single human vessel. It was brief, almost casual, yet the translation left no room for misunderstanding. Observation is noted. Curiosity is natural. Do not interfere. The balance must not be broken. The Valoran captain who received the message read it aloud, then fell silent. Every crew member on the bridge understood. The humans were aware of them. They had been aware from the beginning, and yet instead of aggression, they offered guidance. A boundary. A warning. Not a threat, but an insistence that certain things were not to be disturbed. The council convened again. Some members argued that the humans could be reasoned with. Others insisted that no negotiation was possible. They had no frame of reference for the humans' capabilities or intentions. One voice, quieter than the rest, suggested something different. Perhaps the humans were not a force to control, but a force to understand. The debate continued for days with no resolution. But outside the council chambers, life went on. The Valorans studied, speculated, and debated. And slowly, the reality became clear. The humans were no longer just a part of history. They were a present power, quietly shaping the future of the galaxy. During that time, another event shook the Valoran fleet. One of the reconnaissance probes captured an unusual phenomenon near the human colony, a massive wave of energy passing through empty space. The energy was unlike anything recorded before. It moved not in a straight line, but like a living entity, interacting with gravitational fields, star radiation, and even the sensors of the probe itself. The fleet watched in awe. It wasn't a weapon. It was a controlled demonstration of environmental mastery, humans manipulating space itself without violence, showing their ability to influence the galaxy on a scale the Valorans couldn't comprehend. That moment became a turning point. The Valorans no longer feared humanity in the traditional sense. They respected them, not because humans had weapons or ships, but because they had knowledge, discipline, and understanding far beyond any other civilization. Humans were no longer a species to be measured in military strength. They were something else entirely. The captain of the observing fleet wrote in her private journal, "We thought we ruled the stars. We were wrong. They do not conquer. They endure. They watch, and one day we may learn what it means to be truly strong." Even after the humans vanished once again, leaving no trace, the impression remained. Every observation, every message, and every display of power had left the Valorans stunned and thoughtful. They realized that humanity had returned not to dominate, but to protect something far greater than themselves. And somewhere, deep in the void of space, the human fleet continued its silent patrols, invisible yet omnipresent, maintaining balance in a galaxy that did not yet understand it. The first contact had been astonishing. The second observation had been humbling. And now the Valorans understood that humans were more than they could imagine. Guardians of a balance that stretched across the stars, watching silently, waiting, and always learning. The universe had shifted. The humans had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy had grown quiet in the weeks following the last observation of the human fleet. The Valoran Empire's fleets returned to their usual patrols, but nothing felt the same. Every officer, scientist, and leader carried the weight of what they had seen. The humans were not just powerful, they were something beyond imagination. They moved with precision, communicated through motion and energy, and shaped the universe in ways no one could comprehend. For the captain of the observing fleet, sleep became almost impossible. Every night she replayed the footage of the glowing human city, the perfectly synchronized fleet, and the vast gateway the humans had revealed. Questions filled her mind. How had humanity survived? How had they evolved so far beyond the known races? And most importantly, what was the balance they protected? The Council of the Valoran Empire debated endlessly. Some argued that humanity's return was a warning. Others believed it was a sign of hope. Few dared to suggest what the captain had begun to understand. The humans were not a threat. They were guardians. And their presence meant the galaxy had changed forever. The Valorans sent another probe, this time closer to the human fleet's hidden colony. The probe traveled silently, cloaked in advanced stealth technology. Its mission was to observe, record, and report. But even from a distance, the humans seemed aware. The probe detected faint pulses of energy adjusting in response to its presence. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the message was clear. We know you are watching. The data returned was more astounding than ever. The humans had expanded their floating city, building entire sectors of energy fields that served as both protection and habitat. Massive platforms hovered, supporting colonies, laboratories, and training grounds. Small fleets of ships moved in perfect formations, carrying supplies, repairing structures, and performing maneuvers that seemed choreographed like a dance. The Valorans realized that humanity had not merely survived, they had mastered survival. Every ship, every structure, every pattern of movement displayed intelligence far beyond what the Valorans had ever known. The humans were not just advanced, they were evolved, a civilization that had learned to control technology, energy, and even space itself. Then came the first sign that the humans were aware of more than just observation. They were aware of the future. A sudden energy pulse erupted from the colony, stronger than any previously recorded. It was not violent, but it was unmistakably a display of power. Sensors in the Valoran probe went haywire. The energy wave seemed to reach out, interacting with gravitational fields, radiation, and even the probe's navigation system. It was like the humans were testing, not attacking, showing that they could manipulate space and energy with absolute precision. The Valorans debated the meaning. Was it a warning? A demonstration? Or perhaps a signal meant to be understood only by those who were ready to see it? The captain of the observing fleet believed it was all three. Humanity was revealing power, teaching restraint, and testing curiosity all at once. Days later, a message came through the probe. A simple, clear transmission. The balance must hold. Observe, learn, but do not interfere. The words carried weight far greater than any weapon. It was not a command, not a threat, it was a truth. Humanity had taken responsibility for something the Valorans couldn't yet comprehend. And in that truth, the Empire recognized its own limits. The observing fleet returned home, carrying the knowledge of what they had witnessed. Every officer reported their experience, but no one could fully explain what it meant. The humans were no longer a distant memory of legend. They were a living presence in the galaxy, shaping its future in ways the Valorans could barely understand. In the weeks that followed, a new awareness spread across the Empire. Leaders, scholars, and explorers began to see the humans not as enemies or competitors, but as teachers and guardians. The humans did not conquer, they guided. They did not threaten, they balanced. And their restraint, their precision, and their patience were lessons that the Valorans could not ignore. The captain of the observing fleet wrote in her log, "We believed ourselves the masters of the stars. We were wrong. Humanity does not conquer the universe, they protect it. And in their silence, they command more respect than any fleet, any weapon, or any empire ever could." Then, something unexpected happened. The humans sent another message, not through the probe, not through the fleet, but directly into the consciousness of those who had witnessed them most closely. It was not a voice, not an image, it was an understanding, a sense of presence, calm, and purpose. Those who experienced it felt the humans' intention without words. We are here. We watch, we protect, we wait. No one could explain how it happened. Some thought it was advanced communication using energy waves beyond comprehension. Others believed it was something deeper. Humanity had evolved not only technology but consciousness itself, allowing them to communicate across space in ways that transcended language. The effect was profound. Officers who had doubted, scientists who had scoffed, and leaders who had dismissed the reports all began to understand something fundamental. Humanity was no longer bound by the rules of conventional warfare or empire. They operated on a level that combined intelligence, discipline, and purpose on a scale unmatched by any other species. Even the Valoran military, once proud and confident, began to change. Strategies, training, and priorities shifted. They realized that power without understanding was meaningless. They began to study human methods, their patterns, and their restraint, not to imitate but to learn what true mastery meant. Months passed, and the human fleet remained silent, ever vigilant. They did not invade, attack, or conquer. They simply existed, moved with precision, and maintained the balance they had sworn to protect. The Valorans continued to observe, growing in knowledge, humility, and respect. The captain of the observing fleet often looked to the stars and wondered what lay beyond what the humans were guarding. Whatever it was, she knew the humans were prepared, and she knew the Valorans were not. Finally, the message became clear. Humanity had returned not for glory, not for domination, but for responsibility. They had learned, adapted, and evolved. They had survived centuries of chaos to become guardians of a galaxy far more complex than anyone had imagined. The Valorans understood one unshakable truth. The humans were watching, always, and their presence was a reminder that the universe was bigger, older, and wiser than anyone's civilization could comprehend. And somewhere, beyond the reach of any observer, the HSS Titan and its fleet moved silently among the stars, maintaining balance, guiding the future, and proving that true power was not measured by destruction, but by the ability to preserve what mattered most. The first contact had stunned the Valorans. The observations had humbled them. And now humanity had left an unshakable lesson. In a universe filled with chaos, patience, restraint, and understanding were the greatest powers of all. The Valorans would carry that lesson forever, because the humans had returned. And the galaxy would never ever be the same again.